Good evening and welcome to Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel presented by the JeopardyFan.com. This is May 31st, 2016 at 9 o'clock p.m. Normally I put an episode number up there on the title card, but I'm not 100% sure I'm correct, so I'll err on the side of not putting one. I'll go back and count at some point and we'll see where I get, but in any case, we have two people on our panel right now. I am currently troubleshooting a third, and we should be able to get in okay. Once again, I'm Andy Saunders, and our other two panelists right now, first up, we've got Tom Kelso joining us once again. Thank you, Tom.
Greetings from steamy New York, and can I just say troubleshooting not in the Cincinnati sense of the word, I hope.
Oh. And someone originally from Ohio who's laughing at that joke Tom Kelso just made, Darren Harris-Fain, now in Alabama. Thank you for joining us again, the Dark Lord.
Pleasure to be here. Greetings from steamy Alabama, where it reached 94 Fahrenheit today.
And the humidity above the triple digits.
Yes.
So, what is your so what's the temperature in New York right now, Tom?
Temperature in New York right now is 83.
83? You know what? Up here, an hour west of Toronto, I have my window open, and it is beautiful. It is in the high 60s.
That's what we're hoping for. Let's just say that Home Depot sold out of air conditioners this weekend for a reason.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And Katie Proctor, she'll be joining us in just a little bit. She's just having some issues with connecting right now, but she'll join us very shortly. While we're waiting for her, we might as well talk about Learned League very briefly. The Jeopardy Live Panel private run has started again. Both Tom and Darren are doing rather well so far. You guys are holding down the second and third spots in the standings through 3 match days. I am down in 13th. And our leader is from Pittsburgh, Liz Quinnell. And do you have anything to say about that, guys? Liz kind of playing the role of Pat Kavanaugh so far this year.
She's been very impressive. I have watched with admiration.
Of course, Tom is the defending champion, but
well, I got lucky enough to win this. How did somebody describe it? The ACC of Learned League the other day. I got lucky enough to win that, so I take everybody seriously, extremely seriously in this bunch, and it's a pretty good team in the ACC. So I don't think that Liz is going to be up there quite a long time.
And of course, if you have any comments for the panel in general, you can always leave them on Twitter using the hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel. Now, by the way, in terms of site housekeeping, I did get a chance to interview Buzzy Cohen a few hours ago. You can actually find that interview on the Jeopardy Fan if you want to listen to it after we're done tonight, obviously. But I quite enjoyed the interview myself, and he spoke about a couple of things regarding his run, and it's I think you'll quite enjoy it if you get a chance to listen. While we wait for Katie, we're going to talk about a little later on in the show the possibility of being intimidated in the green room. Katie, of course, if you remember, she had the fortune of playing against June Pak, so we'll talk to her about her experiences with that once we get to that part of the show. But as for the first part, we'll talk a bit about the poll of the week question that I asked on the Jeopardy Fan previously. By the way, this week's poll of the week is a who wore it better between Philip Hughes' dog, Mr. Coco, and my my own Shih Tzu Cross Bailey wearing a Jeopardy hat. So if you want, you can find the poll of the week on the Jeopardy fan and vote for who wore it better. And I can promise you 2 pictures of cute dogs. But last week's poll of the week was whether or not you were okay with Anderson Cooper, or I guess the official question was, should Anderson Cooper be Alex Trebek's replacement host of Jeopardy? If you guys want to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll bring up the specific
Well, go ahead, Tom.
results. Yep, go ahead.
I have to admit that after watching the last Power Players week, I think Anderson's certainly personable enough to do it. I have to admit, though, I wasn't exactly impressed by his performance. But then again, the Power Players were a kind of rough week for all concerned. Hello, where did everybody go?
I'm still here. I'm just on audio at this point, yeah.
Okay. The Power Players as a general group were not quite as impressive as I had actually hoped. Well, I was. If you had asked me before the week who was I rooting for, I would have said Melissa Harris Perry for a variety of reasons, and she did okay. But out of the group of players I saw this week, like we were talking about earlier, okay, so he's got a job already with the people of Minnesota, but I would love somebody like Al Franken actually in the host position once Mr. Trebek hangs up his mustache for good.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you there, Tom, but Katie Proctor has managed to join us, I think. Thank you for getting the, looks like the tech is working out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Looks like it's working out pretty well. We're just discussing right now how you feel about Anderson Cooper being the next host of Jeopardy. When Alex Trebek retires, it was the poll of the week on the Jeopardy fan. In case anyone was wondering, it was 44.9% yes, 55.1% no, which actually I thought was pretty good considering it's Anderson Cooper versus anyone else on the planet. So if you would prefer, if you're like, wanting Ken Jennings or Brad Rutter or Patrick or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah. Well, I first the first time I ever heard of Anderson Cooper was when he hosted The Mole. So he would make a great host, in my opinion. So, and that was at least 10 years ago, I think, when he hosted The Mole.
Yeah, I keep holding out hope for Andy Richter.
Yes.
But, and I confess I really don't watch a lot of Anderson Cooper on CNN, but Power Players game accepted, where he didn't seem to be at all serious. Anderson strikes me as somebody who has A, the gravitas, and B, remarkably enough, given his pedigree, not an enormous ego so that he would just stay out of the way and let the game proceed. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's my impression. So I think I'd be okay with Anderson Cooper. Not my first choice, but I could live with it.
I'd forgotten about The Mole. Katie's right. That was actually a pretty good show that he did a pretty effective job of hosting and doing exactly what Darren was talking about, staying out of the way and letting the game play itself, basically.
Yeah, he did that for the most part. There were a couple of times when you could see his personality, and it was just fine. He was very warm with the contestants and clearly knew his stuff. But could bring the gravitas when necessary. So,
I suspect that the poll might have been clouded slightly by the fact that he didn't really have a great performance in Power Players. I probably will run the poll again, the same question again in a few months, just to see how the general voting changes on that. But so obviously the big story of the week, though, was Buzzy Cohen becoming a super champion, winning 9 games as well. And I would say, well, at least my thesis here is that if you're going to, if you're going to start winning that many, obviously it's going to start intimidating people who you're up against because, of course, you've proven to everyone that's seen you that you've got some game. Now, obviously, Katie and Tom, you can speak to this a lot, and maybe even you can talk a bit about your own green room, Darren. About what's it like when you get there and Maggie is like, well, here's a returning champion, and starts describing him or her a bit. I know you were up against June Pak, Katie, so I'm really curious to know your thoughts on that.
Well, when I got to the green room, when I got to the green room, I already knew that he had won a bunch because I had seen, I think, on the J board that he had taped the week previous. So when I saw him come back, I went, "Oh crap, he won a bunch." And then Maggie said he's won 5 games, and she gave us total, and I don't remember what it was, but it was pretty high. So we all of us in the green room kind of looked at each other and went, "Oh man, this is what we have to go up against." And then we sat in the audience and watched him play, and he went true daily double twice in the 2 games that I watched from the audience. At which point we all really looked at each other and went, "Oh man." So it was a little intimidating in the green room, but it was much more intimidating after watching him play. That was really when things got intense.
By the way, I just realized I had asked Samir Rawal, the Canadian who went up against Matt Jackson, if he was available to come on tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't, but he did leave the following note for me, so I'll add this to the discussion right now. He says that after watching Matt Jackson play 3 games, I guess similar to what Katie's mentioning with June, well, he was initially disappointed, but sort of loosened up knowing he's probably not going to win. Obviously, I competed as hard as I could, but eventually I just tried to take it all in and enjoy the experience while it lasted. And, by disappointed, it was more of a, oh no, this is what I'm up against, and of all days I got to tape, it had to be this one. And I suspect that a lot of people who went up against Ken Jennings probably thought the same thing. That being said, I'm almost a little bit disappointed that Bruce England was unavailable to join us on live panel this evening. But he saw my panelist request, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit disappointed when he said that he wasn't available because I think he may. I would be very interested in hearing what he had to say on this topic. Being intimidated in the green room and what to do.
I guess I was fortunate in that regard in that the returning champion for my first game had only won 1 game at that point. And I saw him win another, but then someone defeated him, and then I played right after that. So going in, I had no sense, oh, this person has had a long run.
Now, of course, Tom, you also came into the green room with a 1-time champion. Can you care to talk about that?
Well, this was I was back in 2002. When the podiums were made out of rock, and we were glad to have that made out of rock. But it was the first week of the 2002 season. And came up there, and Maggie comes into the green room and says, "Okay, and now we'd like to introduce here the returning champion, Myron Meyer." Now, the end of the season hadn't shown yet, but she introduces them, and since we haven't told you this, I ought to tell you, is that Myron set the 1-day record for winnings with $50,000. Uh, uh, I understood exactly what Katie was saying because everybody, I could look around the room and see everybody was like, and we got to play this guy. This is our bucket list, and we have to play him because he just went out and torched the show, and he's had time to practice. We're dead. Myron was a nice enough guy. I mean, he didn't talk much to us, but that's that just made sense. He kind of came in after everybody else had been there, got makeup, got ready, went out there, and it's sort of like nobody really got a chance to talk with him. But it was like he's going to kill us. He's going to just line us up and mow us all down. And then the first person up beats him. So so now we're sitting out in the audience. We're like, okay, I just won the record, and this person beat him. What else are they? What have we walked into here? It just kept feeding off of it. And by that day, at the end of the day, we just had all sorts of folks go through, and we kept topping each other. So at the lunch break, those of us that hadn't even played yet were all person that had just topped the guy that had beaten the person that beat Myron. And we're just like, okay, this has got to stop somewhere, right? You want some gravy with your lunch? You want a nice thick eclair? Anything to slow her down. And in an odd sort of way, and this goes back to what Samir said in his note. By that point, it was like, okay, come at us. Whatever you want to, whatever you want to do. This is a day we've all wanted to be here for, and it's going to happen one way or the other. So let's all just relax and have a good time. And honestly, I think that's how I managed to win, because by that point it was just like, I'm going to get my head handed to these by one of these people, but I'm going to have fun at it. And that's how I actually managed to win twice, as it turned out that day. And then everybody was like, well, that's a scary guy. It's like, me? No, I'm not the scary guy. You should see the scary guy that was in here earlier. But it's a very interesting how that sort of built one after the other.
I think I even said to June, as we were getting ready to walk onto the set, I think I turned around and said something about, well, at least there's no shame in losing to you.
I'm going to my interview with Buzzy earlier. He mentioned to, I think it was Sandy and Maka, I think that's her name, that kind of like, well, somebody's got to beat Andrew Powell. Might as well be me. And I seem to recall Nancy Zerg saying the same thing about Ken Jennings in one of her interviews back a few years ago. So I get, really it sounds like the best way to go in and beat a super champ is, just let's have some fun with this. And, if kind of if someone's going to beat him, might as well be me attitude. And I'd be curious to know if Michael Baker had the same thought going up against Matt Jackson.
Yeah, I just went into Jeopardy thinking anybody can win, and anybody is beatable.
Mm-hmm.
Because, now that we're past the 5-game limit, all of us eventually lose at Jeopardy.
Yes.
Very true.
And it's just a matter of how much can you win on the show before your demise eventually happens.
When you brought up this topic, Andy, I was wondering if you were going to talk about people who tried to psych out other players or show how much they knew before the taping started.
Was that something that happened in your green room?
There was one contestant, and I don't think it was so much a strategy on his part to try to show how much he knew. I think it was just nerves. And he was one of those types of people who is obviously very bright and likes to show how bright he is. but he was trying to answer every practice question, and when we were doing the practices, sitting in the audience, he was talking the answers out loud to himself, and that sort of thing.
How did he end up doing on the show?
I beat him.
You beat him.
Oh. I went in to win, so.
Well, of course. Now I'm sitting here at J-Archive. I was trying to figure out who it was. I'm just glad it wasn't the Canadian that was in your green room.
No.
Speaking of which, I suspect there might be another Canadian coming on in a couple of weeks. But so much for the Canadians being banned, sort of thing. No, it's not me. But from rumors I've heard that there is going to be a Canadian on Jeopardy coming again in the middle of June. So I am June the month, not June the person. So that's I'm looking forward to that one. Do you have? Sorry,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to say, now that the Hamilton Fish category is safely out of the way, he doesn't have to worry about that.
Oh. That was a little odd. Yes.
For those of you listening in on the West Coast, there is a Hamilton Fish category in tonight's Jeopardy round. And first time in a while, I have had to go to Google to figure out who somebody was, and between him and Learned Hand, wow, New Yorkers have some strange names.
You should see what we call the towns. Massapequa. I mean, come on, who came up with that one? That's a drunk test word. I mean,
which one? Sorry.
Massapequa. You can say it. You're sober. If you can't, that's when they put you in the tank overnight.
Ah, okay. What about Schenectady? Is that any better?
Funny thing about that, I just got to tell this story. My father grew up in Schenectady, and you always had to write the name on the paper, and you had to write the name of the school, and they docked you if you spelled the name of the school wrong. So my dad made sure that he bought all of his pencils from the school store, because right there on the pencil is how you spell Schenectady.
I read an article a while back, like a couple of decades ago, that proposed humorous names for sports teams, and it said that any sports team in Schenectady should be called the Dots.
Well, that's a pretty good one.
Just going back to the green room thing for just a second, I want to add that the player who beat me, Brennan Bushy, was just the very opposite, very quiet, very reserved.
And I've met Brennan, and I would say that's the kind of person he is. He's a very, he's a very smart person, but yes, he's very, very reserved. And, you know what? Honestly, that also kind of makes Jeopardy what it is. You have more reserved people. You have somebody who's, not afraid to be more outward with his fun, like Buzzy. And so, how did you guys feel about the various things things said about Buzzy on the internet the past couple of weeks?
I try to ignore stuff like that, honestly.
And, it made absolutely no sense to me, some of the criticism that he was getting, where, I can't even imagine how some people could have seen what we were saying on the television and come away with that impression of the person. So it was just a total mystery to me. I think another friend of the podcast, Jennifer Morrow, nailed it perfectly, and even made a downfall meme look worthwhile again. Which it's been about 5 years since I've even bothered to look at one of those, but she actually nailed it perfectly with that. The video of people losing it over Buzzy. It's just like
Yes, I saw that too, and I quite enjoyed that. So props to Jennifer for coming up with that one. Now, I wonder how social media would have reacted to your run, Tom, or your beating June, Katie, or even June himself. I mean, Twitter certainly wasn't as prevalent back when you were on.
No, it wasn't. I don't think I even checked Twitter, actually. I did check the official Jeopardy Facebook page a day or so later, and there were a little bit of comment, but nothing like it is today. It wasn't nearly as vitriolic and mean-spirited as what I've seen the last few times I've been on the official Jeopardy Facebook page recently. So.
And here's the standard template for how these things tend to run. Here's June, doing well. People come on social media. I can't stand this guy. He's so arrogant, blah, blah, blah. I hope somebody beats him. So you come along and beat him. Yay! Next day, I can't stand this woman. It's just a never-ending cycle.
There was a little bit of that. There was also Trebek made a few comments of how I didn't have a job and I was just a stay-at-home mom. So there was some chattering about that, but that didn't bother me. I didn't really mind or have anything to say about that. So.
Alex.
Huh. Well, I was just curious, and I did a search for Jeopardy June on Twitter right now, and there seems to be a lot of people who I should say the internet was more pro June back then, though I suspect it might have been. I think it was because probably the idiots hadn't found Twitter yet, but.
I can say that my son was pro June. We didn't actually tell the kids that I was going to be on until the night of my first show, and we just sat him down and turned on Jeopardy. But my oldest son. He was 7 at the time. We watched most of June's run, and he was a big fan of June. He was really excited about it. And then when he saw me playing June, his head just exploded. He couldn't quite believe that.
And so how did he react when his mother beat June?
He just sort of didn't know what to make of the whole situation. He was excited, but being only 7, he just didn't quite, the pieces hadn't quite all connected for him at that point. My youngest son was 2 at the time, and for a while he thought that I was always going to be on Jeopardy. The next week or 2 weeks later, he would keep mommy on Jeopardy. It's like, no, honey, I'm done. I'm done.
I'd like to ask you all your opinion of this. I liked watching Buzzy play. I'm glad he did as well as he did. But I wonder if some of the hatred came from the pre-game gestures, if that ticked people off as being arrogant.
Maybe. But I wouldn't fault him for them. I think it was just his way of having fun.
Yeah, just like Jennifer dancing in her episodes.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah.
I mean, people that enjoy the intro seem to be coming in, getting more than a fair share of criticism for that. I mean, when I was on, I'm almost glad that the internet wasn't that big of a deal back then, because whenever they would announce my standings, all I could do was shake my head and shrug, and it's like, are you kidding me? And I'm sure people would have probably come up with like, oh, look at him trying to fake it, or whatever. And to me, it was just, it was just like, I can't believe this is happening, so I'm having fun. And for Jennifer or Buzzy, it was the same thing, and it's ridiculous how people manage to lock on something, anything for any other reason, because if he hadn't done something, then there would have been people on the AV Club or whatever saying, God, he's stiff and he's emotionless, and why can't people enjoy themselves playing this game? I mean, there's just an endless number of folks out there that want to find something bad to write about, no matter what the logic of it is, or even if it countermands the exact same thing they posted about somebody else the other day. I'm sure there were people that complained about Elaine's appearance or something like that after she won against Buzzy. I'm sure that there were people that, and I just didn't even bother to look that night because I didn't want to see them going after a woman for how she looked playing Jeopardy. It was it's almost enough to make you want to stop following anything on social media concerning this game the way it's been going the past year. Sorry if I killed the show.
Well, to be brutally honest, I think there's two factions of people who want Jeopardy, who watch Jeopardy. One who wants kind of contestants not to do too much, and those are the people who decry when quote unquote Bobo the Clown makes it in, and and then you got the people who will be like, yes, I like when people show emotion and are having fun with the game. So you can't please everyone. So just you do you and please yourself.
Absolutely.
So I don't think I can't remember if you've been on since Sarah Edwards has been on live panel. Have you, Tom?
I'm sorry?
Have you been on since Sarah Edwards was on live panel a couple of weeks ago? I can't remember if you've had to field this question yet.
I haven't been on in a while.
Okay, so all three of you guys get to field my next question. Sarah Edwards, when she was on live panel in the, do you have any questions for any of the other panelists? She asked the following, and I now am using it on every single person who comes on live panel. And that question is, when did you fall in love with Jeopardy, and what caused you to fall in love with Jeopardy? You're allowed to say, Tom, when they made the buzzers, when they made the podiums out of wood, and we were happy with that.
Well, no, it goes back to them days. It's like one of the first things I remember watching with my mother, because it came on at like 12:30 in the afternoon back then, and on NBC. Well, our motto: we made it out of rock, and we're glad to have that rock. But like it goes all the way, and then it was one of the few games that we got the home version of. Not that Mom was on it, but we never got the Rice-A-Roni if she did. But and we would play that, and it was just like that's how long back it's been. It's like I was like maybe 6. It's been that long that I can remember watching it and being interested in it and wanting to get the questions right and everything else. And it's been lifelong. I couldn't tell you when I fell in love with it because it just always was kind of there.
What about you, Darren and Katie?
Well, I remember seeing the Art Fleming version when I was a kid. And I remember not liking Jeopardy then because I just couldn't answer the questions. So I found it frustrating. And I would watch other game shows when I pretended to be sick so I could stay home and watch game shows. And then when the show started up again with Alex, I was in college and didn't really have access to television and was really busy anyway. And so I did not start watching it again when it came back. And then I went on for a master's degree, then I went on for a PhD, then I was on the tenure track. And so years and years, I really wasn't watching Jeopardy just because I was so busy. And then I had a kid, and so on and so forth. And this is perhaps a shameful confession, but I really didn't start watching Jeopardy seriously until all of the buzz about Ken Jennings. And I thought, okay, who is this guy? I have to watch this. I know, I'm sorry.
You know, that's perfectly okay. I can think of a lot of people in my generation who were, you know, who started watching Jeopardy because of Ken Jennings. Mm-hmm. Including a couple of people who I can think of at least one person who's a regular on Live Panel that has said on television that, well, you know what, Ken was one of the reasons why I got into game shows. But now I haven't heard your story yet, Katie.
I don't remember when I started watching it. I know I was watching it regularly in high school. I actually auditioned for the teen tournament in 1991, back in the postcard days. I went to New Orleans with my grandmother for 5 days and auditioned then. Passed the test, but wasn't selected at that time, which turns out to be a good thing. I remember I didn't watch in college because I didn't have a TV in college, but I picked it up again afterwards. I know I watched most of Ken Jennings' run. I actually gave birth during one of his episodes. And Jeopardy was on, so I was answering the questions because that's what you do. But I had the sound turned down on the TV, so the doctor finally looked at me and said, "Who are you talking to?" And I just pointed and said, "Jeopardy's on." Maggie wanted me to tell that story on air, but I declined to tell the story about giving birth on live television.
Aww.
But I watched it pretty regularly after that. It was the fact that it was people who were smart and were being celebrated for being smart and for being celebrated for knowing all this random stuff that I seemed to know too. So it was quite the experience. I actually had to turn down 2 auditions later because I was pregnant and they wanted me to be at an audition within 2 weeks of a due date, and that just wasn't going to happen. So third time was the charm, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm at the point. Does anyone on the panel have any other questions randomly for anyone else on the panel? Unless you remember what you had for lunch when you taped many, many years ago, Katie. Do you?
It was a sandwich of some sort. Mostly, sorry, cat. Mostly what I remember is that one of the other contestants who I had been sitting next to in the audience during one of June's games saw me standing in line, didn't say a word, but just came up, gave me a hug, and walked away. That was Lloyd, who then won the next week. He won a game or 2, I think.
Oh, he was just happy that you'd beaten June?
Yes. Yes. that he wasn't going to have to face him.
You've heard me tell the long story often enough, Andy, but I just want to say that the only reason we were giving Lorraine Cruz such a hard time at lunch is because she was such a genuinely nice person that we knew that she was taking it all in fun. Otherwise, we had a person like Darren did in our group, and everybody hated him. Lorraine beat him, so we were also grateful for that. Yeah, the one thing I keep
Okay.
coming back at only nice most of those people were, even in a tense situation like, okay, I'm about to play you guys, and here we're supposed to sit down and have a meal together.
I actually got a ride back to the hotel with one of the contestants that I defeated on the Thursday show.
Yeah, that was
Well,
my.
I'm sure. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Darren.
My experience was similar to Tom's. I won my first game, then we broke for lunch, and I ended up sitting with two people who I knew I would be playing, or at least if I kept winning, later that afternoon. But we had a very nice lunch. I myself got a salad with some chicken, and Maggie kind of nodded her head approvingly. My idea was eat light, but also get some protein. But I also have to say, Maggie and Karina were sitting at the next table over, and Karina brought this enormous handful of candy and just set it on the
As
table
she
there.
always does.
And it's like, I'd love some candy, but I don't think I should. I don't know if they were trying to be nice, or if they were tempting us. I don't know. I think they were trying to be nice.
I think it's trying to be nice, but they don't realize. But they probably don't realize that a lot of the contestants are eating light because they're nervous and they don't want to upset the apple cart too much. That being said, I suspect that if I were ever called, that I would in fact partake in some of the candy at lunch, just because it would probably make the contestant coordinators just that little bit happier.
We have some people.
As long as I could, at least find my way through that sugar crash. But that's what preparation's for.
Right.
Practice playing 2 games of Jeopardy after eating a chocolate bar. So, now that I've gotten through the lunch thing, is there any random questions that anyone has for anyone else on the panel?
I'm curious. If anybody has a sense, and I know it's been erratic the past few years, but when Buzzy lost, Alex said, and we'll see Buzzy at the upcoming Tournament of Champions. Do you think Alex knows something about the scheduling?
My guess is that he's something that he always says after a Super Champ leaves.
Mm-hmm. He said the same thing after June lost, I remember.
I don't think. I mean, to be honest, I think it's. Sorry?
I was just saying, we went for the longest time earlier this year with a streak of nobody ever winning more than 3, if I recall correctly. So, do we have enough 4 or more winners right now to staff a tournament? I'm pretty sure we don't.
Well, we've got. I mean, as it stands right now on the TOC tracker on the website, I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Philip Tew is in 8th place, 3 wins and 96.5. So I would personally posit that between now and, say, November, there's a good chance you could have, in the next couple of weeks, for example, you get another couple 5-timers in there. You're sitting at, Phillips in 10th, and we're still in the middle of June, and
I mean, yeah, we've got about 2 more months of new episodes, I'm thinking.
right, and then another couple of months at the start of next season too. So I would say it's, or I'd say that we're really right on pace for November. So, because remember, you've got a college tournament winner and a teachers tournament winner in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, okay. November, I guess, does make sense then.
I mean, they did, last season, they went a while between Julia's run and Von Winchell winning 5, and as it turns out, it worked out, that they had enough for a tournament there, so.
Okay, entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I
Any other?
have come to the end.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go
I'm
ahead,
just
Tom.
saying I know that I'm at the end of my evening, so I'm going to have to bow out.
Okay. Well, I think it's probably a good time to end the broadcast anyway. I'd like to thank you guys for coming on to panel, and to our listeners for tuning in this evening. So
Always a pleasure.
Yes.
I'll
Thank
just
you.
yeah.
Thanks for
Thank you
having me.
guys for coming on,
Thank you for
and
inviting me.
I will. Not much on the Twitterverse this evening, but that's okay. I will get the credits card up, and then thank you guys for tuning in. And if you remember also that the audio simulcast is always available on iTunes and Google Play Music, so feel free to subscribe to that. And usually the audio makes its way up about 12 hours after we tape the video. So thank you guys for watching, downloading, however you manage to consume your hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. Thank you very much for doing so. Next episode, I'm thinking Sunday evening for a taping. So if you're on this week and they're watching, be prepared. I may try to get in touch with you. Once again, thank you very much, and have a great night.
Good night, all.